You lie back, the light just soft enough to suggest that maybe, just maybe, it's time to do nothing at all. The shadows in the corners of the room begin to settle. Somewhere outside, a breeze decides to stretch its legs. You close your eyes, and, just like that, you are walking through warm dust in 14th century Mali. It's early morning in the city of Timbuktu, before the merchants start shouting, before the imams climb the wooden steps of the mosques, and before anyone thinks to make a decision. Everything is wrapped in a soft haze of sand and sunrise. The streets are not paved, but they're full cushioned with fine ochre dust, the kind that floats up with every step and coats your ankles like a secret. You pass a man sweeping the steps of a mud brick madrasa. He's not in a rush. No one here is. The air is too thick with gold rumors and goat milk to move quickly. A donkey brays in the distance, as if complaining about the early hour, or about the fact that no one ever asks donkeys how they feel about empires. And here, in this quiet golden moment, you are just one of many an invisible traveler, brushing shoulders with people who don't know that their king is about to become the richest man in recorded history. You probably won't make it through this day. That's okay. Neither did the camel who fainted just south of Cairo under 20 pounds of solid gold. Before we go, Anif, your eyelids are already heavier than a Mamluk tax document. Feel free to like and subscribe. It helps this sleepy little corner of the internet keep its lantern lit. And tell us in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it in your world? Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You hear the rustling of silk, not yours. Silk isn't cheap, even in 1324, and you're not technically part of the royal caravan yet, but someone important is passing. You follow at a respectful distance. He's surrounded by guardsmen, stern men with gold-threaded turbans and swords that gleam with both threat and boredom. At their center, astride a beast that looks too well-fed to be called a camel, sits a man draped in layers of embroidered robes. Gold dust clings to his fingers like sugar. His eyes scan the horizon, not because he's looking for danger, but because he already owns most of what he sees. His name is Musa Kaitai, but the world will come to call him Mansa Musa, King of Kings, Lord of the Mines, distributor of unholy amounts of shiny stuff. You'll want to remember him, but not just for the gold, because while everyone else will tell you about the riches, the camels carrying 300 pounds each, the coins that collapsed a city's economy, the way Cairo's gold price didn't recover for a decade, you're here for something else. You're here for the sleepy corners of his story, like the fact that no one knows exactly when he was born. Historians still debate whether it was 1280 or somewhere vaguely adjacent. Birthday candles weren't a priority in West African record-keeping, it turns out. And here's your first obscure cultural tidbit for the night. In Mand oral tradition, royal lineage is traced through griots, musical storytellers whose memories are stronger than iron, and whose egos are only slightly larger. They can recite 100 generations of genealogy, but not one of them ever thought to jot down a birth date. The wind shifts. You smell incense from the market behind you, frankincense, and fermented dates, and something suspiciously like donkey sweat. But ahead, there's the caravan. 100 camels, each one carrying literal treasure, each one with its own handler, its own rhythm, and at least one deep, existential complaint about desert travel. And somewhere in the middle of them all is the man who turned a Hajj, Muslim pilgrimage, into a gold-glittering diplomatic flex across 3 continents. But that's not today. Today, we're still in Timbuktu, before the journey begins, before the announcements, before the gold hits the road. You pass a boy playing with a wooden hoop. He offers you a smile, then immediately forgets you existed. That's fine. You're mostly here to observe. In the center of the city stands the Sankar Mosque. Its tall, mud brick towers studded with timbers that jut out like a hedgehog's back. Those timbers, they're not decorative, they're scaffolding. You can climb the mosque to fix it while fasting, barefoot, and deeply questioning your life choices. Mansa Musa, you've heard, will fund a grand library here after his pilgrimage, one that will house hundreds of manuscripts on astronomy, law, poetry, and medicine, most of them still waiting, centuries later, to be properly translated. But right now, the mosque is quiet. You find a place to sit. The sun moves up a little, higher in the sky, and the dust keeps drifting, as if nothing important is about to happen. Because the thing about history is, it never announces itself. Not until it's already halfway to Cairo, dragging 100 camels and 1,000 ambitions. Behind it, you sigh, you settle, you wait. When the royal announcement comes, it's not as grand as you'd expect. A trumpet blows a long, slow note, the kind that feels like someone trying very hard not to startle the goats. A man with a voice like warm gravel shouts something in Sunnic, and suddenly the streets of Timbuktu start to hum. Not buzz, not roar, just hum like a drumbeat beneath the sand. You drift along the edge of the city square, watching people gather. Everyone already knows the news, they just want to hear it officially. Because in a world without smartphones, announcements are a kind of theater. And today's headline is, Mansa Musa is going on Hajj. That's the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, required once in a lifetime, if you can afford it. And Musa can afford it about 372 times. But he's only doing it once. Grandly you spot a girl, selling dried figs. She's not shouting like the others, just holding her basket calmly, like she knows it will all sell by noon. You buy one. It tastes like sweet sand and sun-warmed syrup. Also maybe camel hair. The square is filling up now. You count at least 3 men wearing turbans tall enough to block out the sun for nearby birds. One old scholar mutters, "About time," under his breath. Another replies, "He's been planning this for years." A third just says, "Hope the Egyptians like gold." They will. Too much, actually. Here's your historical fact of the section. During his stop in Cairo, Mansa Musa gave away so much gold that he caused a decade-long inflation crisis. Prices soared, markets wobbled, and local economists invented the medieval equivalent of a stress headache. But that's still weeks away. For now, the camels are being loaded, not with just gold, but silk, spices, drinking water in jars sealed with wax. Rolls of fabric dyed so richly they look like crushed rubies in the sun. You notice something odd, small, square packages of what looks like salt. Turns out salt was once worth its weight in gold, quite literally. West African empires like Mali and Ghana traded slabs of salt mine from the Saharan heartlands for goods across the continent. Some traders preferred salt over coin. Salt doesn't melt, unless you count crying. You stand near the edge of the caravan as it begins to swing, winding, full of tension and preparation. Everyone is doing something except you, which is, honestly, the best possible job in this story. One camel chews its cud and stares at you. You stare back. It seems unimpressed. You blink first. A quiet voice behind you says, "He's really going to do it." You turn. It's a young man, barely past 20, with a leather satchel and eyes that don't know how to stop moving. He tells you he's a scribe. He's been chosen to document the pilgrimage. He's already practicing his lines. You ask him his name. He says, "Call me Ismail. Everyone else will forget." They probably will. Scholars still debate whether Mansa Musa took official record keepers with him or if the stories we have now came from outside observers in Egypt and the Levant. No one agrees. Which, if you think about it, is a historian's favorite hobby. The heat begins to settle, heavy and warm. Someone starts playing a 2-stringed lute. The sound drifts through the camel grunts and fig seller calls like a lullaby, made of sunlight and smoke, and slowly, with all the urgency of a turtle sipping tea, the great caravan begins to move, not fast, not loud, but unstoppable, just like sleep. You're still walking. You've lost count of how many steps it's been, how many days have passed, or how much sand has collected in your sandals. But the caravan hasn't stopped, not really. It moves with the rhythm of breath and prayer, a slow exhale stretching across continents. Somewhere behind you is Timbuktu. Somewhere far ahead is Mecca. But right now, you're somewhere in between, on the long road through the Sahara, which is less like a road and more like a suggestion whispered by the wind. You've made friends with a camel, or at least, you've stopped trying to understand its judgmental stares. This one is named Barku, and he occasionally sneezes with alarming force. It's oddly comforting, like being glared at by a sand-colored grandfather who disapproves of your posture. Around you, the procession stretches on for miles. Camels loaded with silk, gold, ivory, and books. Servants in long linen tunics balancing bundles on their heads. Scholars reciting verses under their breath. Guards riding on horseback, half bored, half ready. And Mansa Musa still calm, still robed in more embroidery than a medieval curtain, still somehow looking like a man who has never lost a sandal. In Mud. You walk near the scribes for a while. Ismail, the young one, is still muttering drafts to himself. Today the king's shadow touched the sand before sunrise. He stops and crosses it out in his head. Today, the sun rose beneath the feet of Musa. Also no good, you offer. Today the dust refused to settle until the king passed. He gives you a skeptical look, then nods. Too poetic. I'll save it for when I'm old. Ahead, someone calls for a break. Not because they're tired, though they are, but because one of the camels has become deeply philosophical and refuses to move until its grievances are heard. The handler tries everything, short of therapy. Eventually, gold is removed. The camel moves, problem solved. Here's your historical fact for this section. Mansa Musa's caravan reportedly included 60,000 people. That's more than the population of many cities at the time. Think of it as a traveling nation-state, with its own rules, rhythms, and regrettable foot blisters. And here's your obscure tidbit. There were musicians. Lots of them. Strings, flutes, even percussionists. The journey was musical. Some accounts say Mansa Musa insisted on traveling with a royal band, because if you're going to cross the Sahara, you might as well do it with a soundtrack. You pass by one such musician now. He's playing a Njania stringed instrument that predates the banjo. He strums lazily, eyes half closed, as if the tune has been playing long before you arrived and will continue long after you leave. The sun dips lower. Shadows stretch. You pause by a small cooking fire, where a group of older women are stirring millet porridge in a pot the size of your dreams. They wave you over. You sit, you eat. It tastes like patience and pepper. One of them laughs and says, "The king thinks he is generous." Then she offers you a second bowl without asking. The fire crackles. Someone tells a story about a ghost in the dunes. Another about a snake with gold scales. No one checks the facts. No one cares. Out here, stories are the only currency that grows. More valuable the more you spend them. You lie down on a mat woven from reeds and thoughts. Above you, stars blink into view, uncountable, indifferent, familiar. You pull your robe tighter around you. The wind has teeth tonight, and still the caravan moves, some asleep, some awake. All dreaming of a city they've never seen. Morning begins without announcement. Just a slow fading in of light, like someone turned up the contrast on the horizon. You wake up covered in dust, but it's a friendly kind of dust. It greets you with a shrug and sticks to your eyelashes like it paid rent. The caravan is already packing. Servants roll up sleeping mats. Someone chases a goat that was not authorized to wander. A child runs barefoot, laughing, until his mother catches him and reminds him that joy is permitted, but only after tea. You stretch. Everything cracks. Ismail, the scribe, appears holding a scroll. He looks like he hasn't slept. He probably hasn't. He sits beside you and says, "Do you think anyone will remember my words?" You reply, "Only if they survive the camels." He smiles without humor. "We write because we are not kings. We write because we are not remembered otherwise." Then he gets up and disappears into the crowd. You make your way toward the water caravan. Dozens of clay jars are stacked in wagons, wrapped in damp cloth to keep the temperature bearable. One of the drivers tells you he's from Gao, and he used to be a fisherman. "Now I fish for silence," he jokes, and then doesn't speak again for the rest of the day. You see Mansa Musa around midday. He's kneeling in the sand, facing east, whispering prayers into the wind. His robe trails behind him, glinting faintly with golden thread. A servant stands nearby holding a parasol made of dyed reeds in shade. You're close enough to hear one of the king's guards mutter, "He prays more than he speaks." Someone else replies, "He is speaking, just not to us." Here's your historical fact. Mansa Musa made his pilgrimage not just out of duty, but to display the piety and sophistication of Mali to the broader Islamic world. It wasn't just a journey, it was public relations, on an imperial scale. And now, for something weird. There are reports that at one point in the journey, he handed out gold nuggets to street beggars with so much enthusiasm that it created housing shortages in nearby towns. People stopped working. Prices soared. Begging became a brief, golden profession. You walk alongside the caravan for hours. There's rhythm now, a kind of hypnotic sway. Camels shuffle, feet drag, water sloshes, and always, the whisper of sand brushing sand. You pass a shrine built from stacked stones. No one knows who built it, or when, or why, but everyone adds a pebble, and no one touches the bones buried beneath it. The desert doesn't forget, but it also doesn't explain. Later, as the sun begins to fall sideways across the dunes, a storm appears on the horizon, not rain, just wind. It hits slowly like being wrapped in gauze, made of noise. Visibility drops. You stay close to the person in front of you. You hold Barku's saddle strap, and he makes a disgruntled huff, like you've insulted his ancestors. Everything becomes beige. You hear a flute playing somewhere to your left. Someone is singing a lullaby in Fulani. Someone else is coughing, and then just as suddenly it clears, the sky reappears. Stars return, and in the distance, the edge of a river glimmers like spilled mercury. Tomorrow, the caravan will reach the first great city outside of Mali's borders. But tonight, you sleep in a crescent of tents, under a moon so bright, it feels borrowed, and for the first time, you dream in gold. The tents flap quietly in the breeze, like old books trying to whisper their pages shut. You wake slowly, unsure if it's morning, or simply a quieter part of the night. The air smells like wet linen, wood smoke, and yesterday's ambition. Outside, the river Gurgles. It's the Niger, wide, slow, and watching. You step out into the soft glow of pre-dawn. The world is gray and gold, as if someone dipped the desert in diluted honey. The caravanners are waking up, stretching, spitting, praying. A woman pours water over her hands, humming a tune that might be a prayer, or just something her grandmother once sang while baking millet cakes. You follow the scent of breakfast, which, unsurprisingly, is millet cakes. They're dry, but reassuring, like a friend who doesn't talk much, but always shows up. The river crossing is ceremonial, not because it has to be, but because Mansa Musa is involved, and he has a flair for moments. Camels are led across narrow barges, servants shout, ducks panic. You watch as gold-laced saddles gleam under the morning sun, while musicians play what might be a celebratory song or just a very dramatic tuning exercise. A local fisherman paddles past in a canoe barely wider than a broomstick. He looks up at the procession, spits in the water, and mutters, "Too many shoes," then keeps paddling. You spot Ismail again. He's writing by the riverbank with ink that looks suspiciously like mashed berries. You ask what? He's recording today. The water, he says. People forget the water, but empires are built on it. Here's your historical fact. The Niger River was central to Mali's trade, transportation, and agricultural systems. It wasn't just a river, it was a lifeline linking cities like Timbuktu, Gao, and Jen into a web of culture, commerce, and mud today. The caravan moves downstream for a while, along the bend of the riverbank, where goats outnumber people, and the trees are suspiciously good at hiding monkeys. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some manned travelers believed certain stretches of the river were watched over by spirits jinn, who lived in the reeds and required silence, or at least sincere excuses. That's why the caravan falls unusually quiet at midday, just as you pass a grove of half-submerged palms. No one speaks. Even the camels seem polite. By nightfall, you've stopped in a clearing that smells like mango and mosquito plans gone wrong. The tents are pitched close together tonight. Fires are low. The stars come out late, reluctant but lovely. You lie back, arms folded under your head, and think about how you haven't seen a single city wall in days. Just stories, and more camels than you ever wanted to meet. Somewhere in the darkness, someone plays a two-note melody for an hour straight. You can't decide if it's genius or exhaustion. Sleep arrives without knocking. It's morning again, and this time the world wakes up with you. Birds scream from the trees, like they've remembered something important and urgently want you to know about it. You pull your robe tighter, mutter something unprintable in ancient Bambara, and rise to greet the day with all the enthusiasm of a camel facing its third loading shift. The caravan is buzzing. Why? Because today, you'll reach Walata, the first major city outside the core of Mali's empire. A Saharan oasis that has seen kings, caravans, and arguments about salt prices for centuries. It's not Cairo, but it matters. You ride part of the way on a wagon filled with cloth bolts. The driver tells you he used to be a merchant, but joined the caravan to see the world. So far, he says, I've seen sand, sweat, and a man try to bribe a camel with raisins. The camel lost interest. The man is still recovering. As the day heats up, the scenery changes. What was once flat becomes rocky. Trees give way to scraggly shrubs that look like they gave up halfway through puberty. The wind picks up. Dust settles into your clothes like a second skin, and then, just as your patience expires, you see it. Walata, a city built from sun and stone. The walls are tall, studded with wood beams that jut out like ribs. They're practical for repairs, but they also give the buildings a look of determined surprise. You pass through the city gates and into a maze of narrow alleys where the shade is thick and the smells are aggressive. Cumin, sweat, roasted meat, and something distinctly camel-adjacent. Children run alongside the caravan, shouting greetings in multiple languages. Traders line the streets, holding up dyed fabrics and polished stones. You hear a scholar arguing about star charts. You hear a woman cursing at a monkey that stole her dates. You hear music that's halfway between a lullaby and a war cry. Musa rides at the center, unbothered. Here's your historical fact. Walata was a key hub on the trans-Saharan trade route, linking the Sahel to North Africa and beyond. It was a melting pot long before melting pots were trendy. Merchants from Egypt, Morocco, and even Italy passed through trading salt, gold, books, and, occasionally, stories that didn't age well. You find yourself standing near a well. A young man pulls up water with practiced ease and offers you a drink. It tastes like old coins and new hope. He tells you, Walata used to be controlled by the Ghana Empire before Mali took it. Same sand, he says, different taxes. Obscure tidbit. For the day, in some Saharan cities, like Walata, travelers would inscribe poems and prayers on the walls using charcoal or chalk. Not graffiti, exactly, more like communal journaling. Some survive to this day, most do not. That's how walls work. You add a small symbol of your own, just a line and a dot. You don't know what it means, but maybe someone will. Someday, evening settles like a blanket, just warm enough. Tonight, Mansa Musa hosts a gathering in a tiled courtyard. Lanterns swing from rope lines above. Food is served. Music drifts through the air like a story too tired to reach the ending. You sit near the edge. Ismail reads aloud from his scroll. The king has entered Walata. He has seen its walls. He has seen its waters. He has not yet seen its soul. He looks up and shrugs. Maybe tomorrow. You smile. Maybe he's right. Then again, maybe you've already seen it. It's the merchant's laugh, the child's shout, the monkey's smug expression. It's the dust you'll carry into the next city, and it's the ache in your legs that says, somehow, this journey has only just begun. Morning arrives with less ceremony than expected. No trumpets, no declarations, just the slow sigh of another desert city beginning its day, and the scratchy whisper of fabric against skin as the caravan prepares to move again. You take a final glance at Walata's walls, still covered in hand-drawn symbols, half-remembered prayers, and one rather ambitious drawing of a camel wearing a crown. Probably Ismail's work, or a bored guard with artistic aspirations. The caravan stretches its limbs like a waking creature, camels rising awkwardly, servants rolling up mats, guards checking weapons with the laziness of people who hope they won't be needed. You join the flow. Today marks the crossing into unfamiliar territory. Even for Musa, beyond Walata lies the broader Sahara, wide, restless, and about as forgiving as a cranky librarian during finals week. Still, Mansa Musa seems unshaken. He rides near the front again, his golden robe catching just enough light to make photographers, if they existed, weep. He speaks to no one this morning. Just the sand, or maybe the sky. You ride beside a merchant named Bakari, whose donkey carries exactly 12 types of incense and one small box labeled miscellaneous regrets. He says he's hoping to sell his goods in Cairo, but really just wants to eat. Something that hasn't been salted or dried since the reign of a minor dynasty. You ever tried fresh figs? He asks. They don't whisper back. You nod politely. The desert does strange things to people as the caravan winds its way out of Walata's reach. The landscape changes, slowly, subtly, but unmistakably. The horizon flattens, the sky widens, and the ground becomes a kind of eternal breadcrumb trail made of dust, cracked stone, and camel tracks that go on for miles before surrendering to wind. Here's your historical fact. The Trans-Saharan trade route was one of the most important commercial arteries of the medieval world, connecting West Africa to North Africa and the Mediterranean beyond. It was dangerous, yes, but lucrative. Salt flowed south, gold flowed north, and along with them, ideas, languages, and the occasional recipe for very bad soup. Your obscure tidbit. Caravan leaders often hired desert guides called azawads, who memorized routes not with maps, but with songs. Each dune, each well, each cursed rock had its place in a melodia living GPS system sung by heart. And if you forgot the tune, well, you learned to like sand. Midday heat presses down like a sermon with no end in sight. Everyone wraps cloth around their faces. Barku the camel makes a noise that translates roughly to no thanks. You walk a while in silence. Then Ismail appears beside you again, squinting at the ground. There used to be cities here, he says. Now there's just wind. You ask him what happened. He shrugs. No water, no stories. Same thing. The sun finally begins to dip low, turning the dunes into molten bronze. You reach a cluster of palm trees that rise from the emptiness like a hallucination with good posture. It's an oasis, but barely. A cracked well, a few goats, One old man selling dates that look like they've seen things. Camp is pitched. You drink water that tastes like survival, and as night rises, full of quiet and starlight, you realize something odd. The desert doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels patient, like it's waiting for you to notice something. You wake in the middle of the night to the sound of whispering. Not voices, not people, just wind sifting through tents, across blankets, through sleeping curls of incense. Smoke like it's looking for something it lost centuries ago. You sit up. The moon is sharp tonight, carving clean shadows into the sand. You step outside and see them. Musa, awake, seated cross-legged near a low fire, reading, or praying, or both. You don't interrupt. You just sit nearby. After a while, he speaks not to you, exactly. More like aloud, to the dark. We carry gold, but we follow light. You say nothing, which is, coincidentally, the perfect thing to say to a king in contemplation. At dawn, the caravan stirs again. A child cries, a pot clatters, Barku sneezes, emphatically. You begin the day's march in silence, the wind pushing fine sand across your path like a veil. By midday, the caravan approaches a cluster of jagged rocks, known as the bones of the wind. The guides murmur songs under their breath. One taps a rhythm on the side of a water jar. The mood is heavy, but expectant. Your historical fact for today: the Sahara isn't just sand. It's mountains, cliffs, dry riverbeds, salt flats, and ancient stone formations that once framed lake shores. Thousands of years ago, this desert was green. Trees stood where now only camel prints remain. And here's your obscure tidbit. Some travelers believed that stones in certain formations could bring good fortune or bad dreams, depending on how the wind moved through them, so they'd avoid sleeping near them, or worse, rearrange them, which annoyed the spirits greatly. You eat lunch standing up, a flatbread filled with something that's probably chickpeas, but tastes vaguely philosophical. Bakari tells a joke about a lizard who tries to join a caravan by pretending to be a shoe. No one laughs. Even the lizard in question would have cringed. By late afternoon, you reach Togaza town, made entirely of salt. Yes, really, the buildings are blocks of crystallized salt. The wind tastes briny. Your lips chap instantly. You wonder if you've walked into a seasoning mistake. Togaza is a mining settlement, not a city. Few live here by choice, but Mali controls it, and salt white gold is as precious to the empire's economy as the yellow kind. The workers here are hardened, quiet, and perpetually thirsty. Musa does not linger. He walks the perimeter, nods once, then moves on, but before the caravan departs, you witness something odd, a ritual. A group of salt miners gather around a flat slab of salt and pour a few drops of water onto it. Then they sit silently, staring. No one speaks, no one eats. Then they leave. You ask someone what it means. They shrugged. A reminder that we're all made of salt and stories, and both can vanish. You write that down. Isma sees it and steals the line. That's fair. You stole his fig last week. As night falls, the caravan makes camp at the edge of Togaza, far enough to avoid the salt wind, close enough to smell the wealth. You lie back again, this time on a mat that's somehow both too thin and too warm. The stars above are bright enough to make promises they don't intend to keep. You think about Musa, about Wablada, about how much gold it takes to get a camel's respect. You think about nothing, and soon, nothing becomes sleep. By now, walking feels less like movement, and more like a way of life. You don't remember what shoes feel like when they're clean. Your feet are permanently baptized in sand. Even Barku has stopped judging you. You've reached an understanding. You don't ask him to hurry, and he doesn't spit at you before breakfast. Today begins like most desert days, with a sun that rises as if it's been personally insulted, wind that tastes like powdered bone, and someone in the caravan loudly discovering they forgot to tie down their saddlebag. But there's a new energy in the air. The desert is thinning. You're approaching Tuat, a network of oases and trading towns tucked like stubborn green gems into the Sahara's belly. There's talk of citrus trees, water, real beds, gossip, the things empires and exhausted ankles dream of. And Musa is smiling again. Not broadly, of course. Mansa Musa's smile is the kind of thing you catch like a desert mirage, soft, cautious, reluctant to be too excited before the water is confirmed real. You pass shepherds along the path now. Tuareg, tribesmen in deep blue robes, their faces veiled, their eyes bright with intelligence and suspicion. They don't speak much, but their camels are taller, sleeker, and infinitely cooler than yours. Barku glares at one for a full hour. Historical fact for today: the Tuat region was a critical midpoint between West Africa and North Africa, full of well-fortified oasis towns, date plantations, and communities who had mastered the art of surviving without rushing. These weren't just stops, they were economic and cultural crossroads. Obscure tidbit: in some Tuat towns, travelers would trade poetry for supplies. Not gold, not salt, just verses recited, in person, sometimes over tea. If the verse moved the host, they'd feed you. If not, you'd try again. Starving poets were common. The caravan reaches the outer edge of one such oasis by sunset. You don't see buildings at first, just a sudden green fringe, like the desert decided to grow a beard overnight. Then you hear it, the gentle lapping of water in irrigation channels, the distant clink of ceramic cups, and the smell, dear heavens, the smell of lemons and hot bread. You almost cry. Barku does cry, but it's because he stepped in something unspeakable. The locals meet you with curiosity and reverence. Children hide behind doors. Merchants step forward, eyes wide with equal parts respect and business strategy. Mansa Musa, in all his gold-threaded gravity, dismounts. He walks into the heart of the oasis like a man who understands that luxury is relative and that sometimes a shaded courtyard and a cool drink are more powerful than any throne. You sleep that night on an actual mat, stuffed with something softer than sand. It might be grass, or feathers, or powdered dreams. Whatever it is, you don't ask, you just let the oasis hold you, and you sleep like someone who remembers what peace smells like. The caravan lingers. No one says it aloud, but no one wants to leave Tuat. Not yet. Musa allows an extra day. The excuse is restocking supplies, but everyone knows that means pretend to be human again before the next stretch. You take the day slowly. You wander the market, tiny stalls built from woven reed walls and shaded with patched cloth. The vendors sell everything: dried dates, embroidered shoes, copper bowls, herbs for digestion, herbs for heartbreak, and one item labeled simply medicine for marriages. You don't ask. Ismail is scribbling furiously in a shaded corner, trying to capture the smell of cinnamon with adjectives. You offer him a roasted almond. He nods without looking up. Nearby, two old men argue about whether the stars moved differently the night Mansa Musa arrived. One swears he saw the moonbow, the other insists it was just indigestion. Your historical fact: Islamic astronomy and learning flourished along the Trans-Saharan route, especially in oasis towns where scholars rested, exchanged texts, and debated theology under the stars. It wasn't just about trade, it was about knowledge. Tuat had libraries, quiet ones, full of scrolls that smelled like ink and ambition. Obscure cultural tidbit: in some of these towns, nighttime storytelling was treated as both entertainment and moral instruction. But the best storytellers weren't judged by truth or accuracy. They were judged by how slowly they could tell the tale without losing the listener. The slower, the wiser. You watch one such storyteller in the square that evening. He's old, wrapped in layers even the sun respects, and his voice creaks like a door that only opens for legends. There was once a king, he begins, who walked across the desert not to find gold, but to see if his shadow could touch the heart of the world. You glance at Musa. He's listening to Dot, not speaking, just listening. The storyteller continues, his words falling like grains of sands. Steady, ancient Dot. You lean against a palm tree. Your eyes blur. The fire in the center of the square burns low. Sparks drift up like prayers that aren't in a hurry. You don't hear the end of the story, but somehow, you feel it. You sleep with the taste of almonds on your tongue and 1,000 years of dust in your clothes. And as you drift off, the stars seem to nod as if the sky, too, has decided to rest for the night. The air is different now, sharper, drier, as if the desert, too, knows you're crossing into new territory. The sand underfoot is paler. The sun no longer comforts it, interrogates. And the camels, they've entered the phase of their personality, where they sigh dramatically before every step. You've left Tuat behind. Even Bakurku, who once seemed incapable of emotion beyond mild contempt, looks wistful as the oasis disappears behind a veil of heat. No more date trees, no more citrus, no more nights with pillows that don't bite. Ahead lies the final stretch of Sahara, and beyond that, Egypt. But the road to Cairo is not a road, it's an ordeal. The kind of journey that rewrites your bones. The caravan grows quieter. The songs have stopped. Even Ismail has put away his scroll for now. He just walks, eyes down, lips moving silently in some kind of prayer or possibly a long, slow argument with sand. Mansa Musa remains steady. He rides at the center again, surrounded by guards and shadows. His golden robes have taken on the faded shimmer of a once polished coin, dulled not by age, but by endurance. Your historical fact today. This stretch of Mansa Musa's Hajj was perhaps the most treacherous. Hundreds of miles through open desert with little water, few landmarks, and temperatures that encouraged both hallucinations and poetry. Many travelers didn't make it, but Musa pressed on. Your obscure tidbit. In some Saharan traditions, travelers left behind small tokens, broken combs, beads, torn fabric buried just beneath the surface as a kind of spiritual breadcrumb trail, a way of saying, I was here, I mattered, I hope I make it. You pass one such spot, a rock wrapped in cloth, a ring beside it. No explanation. The wind doesn't pause. You walk on. By mid-afternoon, the heat bends the air into waves. You begin to lose track of time. The landscape repeats itself. One dune looks like the next. One horizon blurs into another. You think about turning back, even though you won't. You think about Cairo, even though you can't see it. You think about rest, even though it's not your turn. That night, camp is made with less talking, fewer fires, and more weary hands. Someone breaks out a gourd of honeyed milk. It tastes like kindness, and for the first time in days, the caravan sings. Just one song, low old, carried on tired voices into an uncaring sky. You sleep under a piece of sky that remembers everything. The first sign of Egypt is not a building, it's a bird, a small heron, white and deliberate, soaring over your head, with the confident air of someone who knows they're almost home. Then you see it, a thin line of green on the horizon. The Nile. You don't run toward it. You walk slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching a lover after years apart. Unsure if the feeling is mutual, the caravan crests a final hill and then it's there. Fustat, the city before. Cairo, bustling, crowded, sticky with trade and ambition. Mosques, markets, and noise. So much noise. You've made it, and so has Mansa Musa. But Cairo waits, still ahead. Across the river, the plan is to rest in Fustat first, let the caravan recover. But nothing goes quite to plan, because the minute word spreads the king of Mali has arrived. Fustat loses its mind. Merchants abandon their stalls to follow the caravan. Street performers stop mid-acrobat. A man selling chickpeas has a crisis of faith, and Musa, as always, handles it with graceful silence. Here's your historical fact. When Mansa Musa entered Cairo, he caused such a sensation that the chroniclers of the Mamluk Sultanate took notice. One contemporary account says Cairo hadn't seen anything like riches, retinues, and generosity that felt mythic even as it happened. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Egyptian poets of the time wrote verses about Musa's caravan, describing it as a river of gold with a heart of prayer. Whether flattery or, oh, it stuck. You're pulled along with the crowd. You cross a narrow bridge. You see people throwing petals. Someone plays a double reed flute with such force it briefly startles Barku, and then you see it. The gates of Cairo. Not just a city, a center of the world. You've heard of its mosques, its madrasas, its scholars, its spice markets, and its scandals. And now, here you are, a dusty dot, in the middle of a moment that will echo for centuries. The caravan halts just outside the main gate. Mansa Musa dismounts, adjusts his robe, nods once to his guards, and walks forward, as if this very moment had always been waiting for him. You follow, because how could you not? Inside the city, voices rise, children shout, coins glint, and the smell lemons, cumin, history, and hot bread wraps around you, like a home you didn't know you missed. Tonight, the king will meet the sultan. Tomorrow, Cairo will remember. But for now, you just breathe in a city that's more alive than anything you've seen in weeks, and you think, this was worth it. Cairo is louder than you imagined. Not just noisy, it's orchestrated chaos. Horses clatter through tight alleyways. Market hawkers shout in 3 languages and 2 pitches too high. And somewhere, always, a rooster crows like it has diplomatic immunity. The city doesn't welcome you gently. It swallows you whole. The caravan enters the city through the Bab al-Nasor, one of Cairo's great northern gates. Soldiers on the ramparts squint down as thousands of travelers, traders, musicians, camels, scholars, and skeptics flow through, like a slow-moving river that just happens to carry a small fortune in gold. You're suddenly aware of how dusty you are, and how clean everything else seems. The city glows with a polished confidence. Stone-paved streets, intricate archways, domes that glint like they've been combed for starlight. Mansa Musa is led through the main thoroughfare, his retinue moving, like a procession from myth. Bystanders gasp. Children try to touch his robe, and are gently nudged away by guards who look like they haven't blinked since Walata. Then, the moment the Sultan of Egypt has summoned him, you hear whispers ripple through the crowd like a contagious breeze. Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad, ruler of the Mamluk Empire, wants an audience. That's no small thing. Egyptian sultans don't just hang out with visitors, no matter how shiny their entourage is. Historical fact: when Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo in 1324, he caused such a sensation with his immense wealth and generosity that he temporarily devalued gold in Egypt. Prices skyrocketed. Markets crashed. The local economy took years to recover. Musa was basically the medieval version of an economic hurricane, except polite, well-dressed, and deeply religious. Obscure cultural tidbit: during that visit, it's said that Musa refused, at first, to kneel before the Sultan, insisting he would bow only to God. After some negotiation and possibly a few awkward silences, he was persuaded to give a respectful nod. Politics, ancient, awkward, and always better with robes. The Sultan's court is dazzling, a building of carved marble, perfumed cushions, tiled fountains, and ceiling beams painted to resemble a heaven Cairo insists it already lives in. You stand at the edge of the hall as Musa enters, escorted by guards in silk and seriousness. The 2 men speak. You can't hear what's said, but the room itself seems to listen, as if history is being braided in real time. Each word are not tied across borders and centuries. When the meeting ends, Musa emerges looking serene, or maybe just relieved he didn't trip on the mosaic floor. Later that evening you sit at a public garden near the Al-Azhar Mosque, watching children chase one another around columns, while their mothers sip mint tea and pretend not to watch. A man next to you shares roasted chickpeas. They say the king gave gold to everyone, he says. I didn't get any. He pops a chickpea. Still impressive though. You nod. Because it is. And because you also didn't get any gold. You walk back to the caravan's temporary quarters through lamplit streets, where the air smells of jasmine, frying onions, and ambition. A man plays a long low note on a ney flute, and it trails behind you, like a lullaby dressed in silk. You lie down on a woven mat, within earshot of the city's breath, and for once, the night hums instead of howls. You wake to bells, not alarm bells, just city bells, morning calls to prayer, market openings, and an aggressive man shouting figs like they're the secret to eternal youth. Cairo has no intention of letting you sleep in. The caravan's rest days have begun. You'll be here a while, long enough to trade, study, mend tents, and let the camels experience the emotional journey of being washed. Today, Musa visits Cairo's mosques and madrasas, where scholars of hadith and logic debate over tea so strong it could file your taxes. You follow, partly for the experience, partly for the shade. At the Al-Azhar University, you listen to a lesson on astronomy, then another on law, then one on something that sounds suspiciously like marriage advice but with more footnotes. Here's your historical fact. Mansa Musa used his time in Cairo to strengthen diplomatic ties, study Islamic scholarship, and demonstrate Mali's commitment to Islam. He donated generously to mosques and institutions. Some say the Sultan was impressed. Others say he was mostly surprised Musa had that much gold to give away and didn't run out halfway. Your obscure tidbit. In Cairo, it was customary for scholars to receive guests not just with food, but with questions. They'd test your knowledge, your humility, and your capacity to answer without immediately contradicting yourself. You could impress someone just by pausing thoughtfully and saying, "That's a matter of some debate. You try that. It works." Twice, you spend part of the day in the Souk Cairo's legendary marketplaces, a maze of lanterns, spices, scarves, trinkets, inkpots, and conversations that escalate into bargains and sometimes marriages. You buy a small ceramic cup glazed with the phrase, "What is yours will find you." The shopkeeper says it's a proverb or a curse, possibly both. You eat lunch near the Khan El Khalili Marketa, mix of stewed lentils, flatbread, and something green you politely stop asking about. Nearby, Musa speaks to local scholars beneath an awning embroidered with Quranic verses. He asks questions about charity, governance, the weight of power. He listens closely. You realize, for someone so rich, he is unusually hungry for wisdom. As the sun sets, Cairo comes alive again, lanterns lighting alleyways, laughter blooming in tea houses, children trailing each other like living beads on a prayer string. You return to the caravan quarters, where the camels are finally quiet. Barku snores like he's trying to prove a point. You sit under an open sky, your ceramic cup in your lap. Tomorrow, the journey home begins, but tonight, Cairo holds you gently, and it feels like the story is resting before its final chapter. The morning of departure tastes like ash and cardamom. It's not sorrow, exactly. More like that bittersweet breath you take when you know something beautiful is ending. Even if your feet are blistered and you've been judging camels for a month straight. The caravan reforms in Cairo's early light. Streets are still cooling from the night's heat. Smoke curls from breakfast fires, and the call to prayer lingers in the air like a ribbon that hasn't quite landed. Mansa Musa stands near the gate, dressed not in gold, but a simple white robe. Still regal, but now wrapped in something softer. Purpose, perhaps. He nods to the city one last time, and just like that, the caravan turns south. The way home begins. The streets are quieter than they were on arrival. Cairo knows how to return to its own rhythm. But shopkeepers still peek out, children wave, and one elderly man yells after you. If you find my cousin in Timbuktu, tell him he still owes me 3 chickens. You make a mental note. You won't remember. The journey south doesn't retrace every exact step. Musa's route shifts hill stop at Mecca on the way home, completing the full Hajj. But for now, you're headed back through the desert. This time lighter in gold, but heavier in story. Historical fact, Mansa Musa's return journey was quieter, but no less important. His pilgrimage had solidified Mali's presence on the global map. Literally, European cartographers began placing the Empire of Mali, and Musa himself, on maps of the known world, often with a crown, a gold nugget, and an expression of mild disapproval. Obscure tidbit, in some West African oral traditions, it said that Musa's footsteps made the earth bloom for weeks after he passed, flowers growing in the tracks of camels, rain following his caravan like a grateful servant. No evidence, of course, just memory, wrapped in poetry. By the 3rd day of the return, the mood has shifted. There is laughter again. The musicians play slower tunes, now not triumphant, but content. The camels seem less annoyed. Even Barku lets a child pet his nose for a full 2 seconds. You pass through small towns that remember you from before. People bow, offer bread, ask for stories, and Mansa Musa gives generously still coins to the poor, cloth to the traders, a smile once to a young girl who offers him a single pomegranate with both hands trembling. He takes it, bows. You sleep beneath stars that you now know by name. You eat meals that taste like return. And slowly, Mali begins to rise again on the horizon, not just as a land, but as a feeling. The place that shaped you, the place that called you home. By the time you see the great river again, the Niger, your old companion, it feels like a greeting. A quiet one, full of understanding. The caravan crosses, and the king walks forward into the waiting arms of a land that has missed him. You follow, because how could you not? And now, the story folds itself shut. The gold dust has settled. The camels have curled into their sleep, like ships finally anchored, and the cities Cairo, Walata, Tuat, Timbuktu glow softly in memory, like lanterns seen from far away. You lie down, blanket tucked beneath you, air warm with silence. Somewhere, the fire's last ember hums, a single note in a song that's nearly ended. Mansa Musa sleeps in his palace now, quiet, surrounded by walls that remember the road. He has walked across deserts, changed economies, met sultans, and prayed in holy lands. But tonight, he simply rests. So do you. The stars above are gentle now, no longer burning, just watching, like old friends. And your body, wrapped in story and stillness, begins to loosen its grip on wakefulness. Let go. There are no more dunes to cross, no cities to impress, no more fig sellers yelling in your dreams. Just the gentle hush of history and the warmth of a journey completed. So close your eyes. Let the camels wander home. Let the wind carry your breath like a feather into the night, and sleep, soft and slow, beneath the sky of a world that waited for you to return. You are home. You made it. Good night.